For many years, Ashton Kutcher was known in Hollywood as the easygoing star with a bright smile and a relaxed personality. On talk shows and red carpets, he appeared confident, funny, and carefree. Audiences often saw him as the actor who could make any situation lighthearted. His public image was built around humor, charm, and a sense that life never seemed to weigh too heavily on him. However, public perception rarely shows the full story of a person's life. Behind the success and recognition was a long personal journey filled with challenges, doubts, and moments that shaped the person he eventually became. Over time, people began to realize that his story was more complex than the cheerful image many associated with him. Like many public figures, he learned early in his career that fame can create a kind of mask. The roles people play on television or in movies can slowly influence how the world sees them. For Kutcher, that process began very early in his career. The persona that audiences embraced was entertaining and memorable, but it also meant that deeper aspects of his life remained mostly unseen for years. Kutcher's rise to fame began when he was cast in the popular television sitcom That 70s Show. At the time, he was only 19 years old and had very little acting experience. The show itself was set in the late 1970s and followed a group of teenagers growing up in a suburban American neighborhood. Through humor and relatable situations, the series explored themes like friendship, family tension, teenage mistakes, and the awkward journey into adulthood. Within that ensemble cast, Kutcher played the character Michael Kelso, a good-natured but somewhat clueless young man whose charm often came from his lack of awareness. The role quickly became one of the most recognizable characters on the show. Audiences loved Kelso because he was harmless, funny, and often unintentionally ridiculous. His personality created many of the show's comedic moments, and Kutcher's performance helped make the character memorable. As the show grew in popularity, millions of viewers began to associate the actor almost entirely with that role. While the opportunity launched his career and brought widespread recognition, it also created a powerful type of typecasting that would influence how critics and audiences judged him for many years afterward. The success of the series came quickly. Within its early seasons, That 70s Show attracted millions of viewers every week, turning several members of the cast into rising stars. For Kutcher, the sudden attention was both exciting and overwhelming. He had gone from being a relatively unknown young man to appearing regularly on television screens across the country. With fame came interviews, promotional events, and a growing fan base that recognized him almost everywhere he went. Yet success also brought criticism. Some reviewers and industry observers argued that his popularity relied more on his appearance and comedic timing than on serious acting ability. Those early judgments created a reputation that followed him through many of his later projects. In Hollywood, first impressions can shape an actor's career for a long time. The role that makes someone famous can also become a label that is difficult to escape. While Kutcher continued working and exploring different opportunities, the public image of the funny but simple character he portrayed remained attached to his name. For a young actor still learning about the industry, navigating that perception became one of the earliest challenges of his professional life. Long before television audiences knew his name, Kutcher's childhood had already included experiences that would deeply influence him later in life. He was born in Iowa into a family that would soon face significant medical challenges. Kutcher has often spoken about growing up alongside his twin brother, Michael. During their early years, the two shared a close bond that shaped much of Ashton's understanding of responsibility and loyalty. Michael was diagnosed with a form of cerebral palsy that affected several aspects of his physical development. Despite the difficulties associated with the condition, their family focused on encouragement rather than limitation. Within their home, Michael was treated like any other member of the family, and Ashton often described him simply as his brother rather than someone defined by a diagnosis. Outside the home, however, life could be less forgiving. School environments sometimes brought teasing or misunderstanding from other children who did not fully understand Michael's condition. Those experiences helped shape Ashton's protective instincts. He frequently tried to include his brother in social situations and remained aware of the differences in how the outside world treated them. These early lessons about empathy and responsibility would stay with him as he grew older. As the brothers entered adolescence, their family faced another serious health crisis. Michael developed a severe heart condition known as viral myocarditis, which caused his heart to enlarge and struggle to function normally. The diagnosis was frightening for the entire family, particularly because doctors warned that the situation could become life-threatening without a transplant. For a young teenager like Ashton, watching his twin brother struggle in the hospital was an emotional experience that left a lasting impression. He spent long hours nearby, worried about what might happen and uncertain about how the future would unfold. Eventually, a donor heart became available, and Michael underwent a successful transplant that saved his life. The outcome brought relief, but the experience also left emotional scars. Witnessing someone so close face a life-or-death situation at a young age can shape a person's outlook in complicated ways. In later interviews, Kutcher reflected on how that period affected his sense of responsibility and the way he approached life. For some people, moments like these inspire caution and reflection. For others, they create a feeling that life is unpredictable and fragile, encouraging them to take risks or pursue opportunities quickly. As Ashton moved through his teenage years, the emotional pressure he carried began to show in other ways. Growing up while watching his twin brother struggle with serious medical issues had left him with feelings that were difficult to process. Instead of expressing those emotions openly, he often reacted with impulsive behavior. School rules began to feel unimportant, and his focus on academics gradually faded. Like many teenagers searching for identity, he sometimes made decisions that later became lessons rather than successes. One of the most serious incidents occurred when he and a cousin attempted to break into their high school building to obtain exam answers. What may have started as a reckless idea quickly became a legal problem. He was arrested and charged with burglary. The court placed him on probation and required community service. For a young man who had not yet discovered his direction in life, the experience was both humiliating and sobering. His family chose not to shield him from the consequences. Instead, they allowed him to face the results of his choices. The lessons stayed with him, reminding him that reputation and responsibility could change quickly depending on the decisions a person makes. After finishing high school, Kutcher enrolled at the University of Iowa with the intention of studying biochemical engineering. His original motivation was deeply personal. He hoped that a scientific career might one day help him contribute to medical research that could benefit people with conditions like those his brother had faced. However, college life introduced a completely different set of distractions. Parties, social gatherings, and the freedom of living away from home made it difficult for him to stay focused on academics. His reputation among friends was that of someone energetic and outgoing, but that lifestyle also created problems. Eventually, he was forced to leave his apartment after complaints about disruptive behavior. During this uncertain period, he took various small jobs to support himself, including working in factories and doing manual labor. While those experiences were far removed from Hollywood, they helped him understand the value of hard work and persistence. At the time, however, he still had no clear idea where his future would lead. Acting was not yet part of his plan, and the idea of becoming a television star seemed extremely unlikely. One evening in Iowa City unexpectedly changed the direction of his life. While spending time at a local bar with friends, Kutcher was approached by someone who suggested he try modeling. At first, the idea sounded unrealistic, but curiosity led him to enter a regional contest known as the Fresh Faces of Iowa competition. To his surprise, he won. That victory opened the door to opportunities in the modeling world. Soon afterward, he traveled to New York to participate in events connected to the International Modeling and Talent Association. Although he did not win the overall competition there, his appearance and personality attracted attention from talent scouts. He signed with a modeling agency and began working on campaigns for well-known fashion brands. The experience provided financial stability and introduced him to the entertainment industry. Modeling also required discipline, travel, and professional expectations that were very different from his previous lifestyle. Yet despite the success, he realized that simply posing for photographs did not fully satisfy him. He wanted something more dynamic and expressive. That desire eventually pushed him to consider acting, a path that would lead him back toward television auditions. When Kutcher began auditioning for television roles, he had little formal training but a natural confidence that casting directors noticed. In the late 1990s, he was offered the chance to audition for a new sitcom that would later become That 70s Show. The series focused on a group of teenagers navigating life, friendship, and family in a Midwestern town during the late 1970s. His character, Michael Kelso, was written as the charming but slightly clueless member of the group. Kutcher leaned into the humor of the role, using exaggerated reactions and timing to make the character memorable. The show quickly became popular with audiences. Week after week, millions tuned in to watch the cast's comedic interactions. For Kutcher, the role became both a blessing and a challenge. It introduced him to a global audience and provided financial success, but it also created a strong public image that would be difficult to escape. Many viewers began to assume that the actor himself was similar to the character he portrayed. That assumption would follow him for years as he tried to expand into different types of roles. While his career was gaining momentum, Kutcher also experienced a deeply disturbing event that remained connected to his story for many years. In 2001, he had plans to meet a young woman named Ashley Ellerin before attending an event together. When he arrived at her home and received no response, he assumed she had already left or changed her plans. He later left the location without realizing that a tragic crime had taken place inside. The following day, Ellerin was discovered murdered in her home. The investigation shocked the local community and eventually became part of a much larger criminal case. Kutcher voluntarily spoke with authorities and later testified as a witness during the trial of the man responsible, the serial killer Michael Gargiulo. Although he was never considered a suspect, the experience left a lasting emotional impact. Being connected to such a tragedy, even indirectly, was something he rarely discussed publicly, but it remained one of the more unsettling moments in the background of his early fame. As the early 2000s continued, Kutcher looked for ways to expand his career beyond traditional acting roles. Hollywood had largely labeled him as a comedic performer, but he wanted greater creative influence. That ambition led him to explore production and behind-the-scenes work. He began collaborating with writers and producers to develop new concepts that could stand out in the crowded television market. One of the ideas involved a hidden camera show built around elaborate pranks. The concept eventually became the MTV series Punk'd. The show placed celebrities into surprising situations that appeared real until the prank was revealed. Audiences quickly became fascinated with the idea that any famous person could suddenly find themselves part of the joke. Kutcher's enthusiastic hosting style and playful personality helped make the show a cultural phenomenon. It became one of the most talked-about programs on television at the time, proving that he had strong instincts as a producer as well as an actor. Even as his television projects gained popularity, Kutcher continued exploring film opportunities. Throughout the early and mid-2000s, he appeared in romantic comedies and dramas that performed reasonably well at the box office. Yet critics often remained divided about his performances. Some praised his natural screen presence and comedic timing, while others argued that he had not yet demonstrated the depth expected from a leading actor. These mixed reactions highlighted a recurring challenge for many performers who begin their careers in sitcoms. Breaking free from a familiar character can take years of effort and experimentation. Kutcher attempted to take on more serious roles in films that explored emotional themes, hoping to show a broader range of abilities. While not every project achieved critical success, the process allowed him to learn more about the craft of acting and the complexities of the film industry. Over time, he also became increasingly interested in entrepreneurship and technology investments, which would later become a significant part of his professional identity. Outside the entertainment industry, Kutcher began dedicating more of his time to social causes that mattered deeply to him. Along with then-wife Demi Moore, he co-founded the organization Thorn. The nonprofit focuses on using modern technology to help combat child exploitation and human trafficking. Through partnerships with law enforcement agencies and digital platforms, the organization develops tools that assist investigators in identifying victims and locating individuals responsible for online abuse. Kutcher has spoken publicly about the emotional impact of hearing stories from survivors and investigators. During testimony before the United States Senate, he described cases involving vulnerable children and emphasized the need for stronger technological solutions to address online exploitation. His advocacy surprised some observers who previously associated him primarily with comedy and entertainment. Yet the seriousness with which he approached the issue demonstrated another side of his personality, one focused on responsibility and social impact rather than celebrity. As his professional life evolved, Kutcher also built a reputation as a savvy investor in technology companies. He co-founded a venture capital firm called A-Grade Investments, which helped support several startup businesses during their early stages. Through this work, he became involved with companies that would later become household names in the digital world. His interest in technology reflected a broader shift occurring in the entertainment industry, where actors and producers increasingly recognize the influence of Silicon Valley innovations. Kutcher's participation in this space demonstrated a willingness to diversify his career beyond acting. Rather than relying solely on film roles, he explored opportunities that combined entrepreneurship with emerging technology trends. This approach gradually changed how some people perceived him. Instead of being seen only as a sitcom actor, he began to be recognized as a business figure who understood how digital platforms could shape the future of media and communication. Despite these achievements, public perception can change quickly when controversial issues arise. Years after that '70s show ended, one of the former cast members, Danny Masterson, faced serious criminal accusations that eventually led to a high-profile trial. During the legal process, several people who had worked with him in the past submitted character letters to the court. Kutcher and his wife, Mila Kunis, were among those who wrote statements describing their personal experiences with Masterson. When news of the letters became public, many people reacted strongly. Critics argued that supporting a colleague in this context conflicted with Kutcher's public advocacy for victims of abuse. Others believed the letters were intended only to provide background about personal interactions rather than challenge the court's verdict. The debate spread widely across social media and news outlets, demonstrating how quickly public figures can become part of larger cultural conversations. The reaction to the situation placed Kutcher in a difficult position. On one hand, he had built a reputation as someone who spoke openly about protecting vulnerable individuals from exploitation. On the other hand, he was facing criticism for appearing to defend a former colleague. In response, he and Kunis released a public statement explaining that their intention had not been to undermine the legal process or minimize the seriousness of the accusations. They clarified that the letters were written as character references describing their own experiences rather than as statements about the case itself. Nevertheless, the controversy highlighted how complex public perception can be. Once a narrative begins circulating online, it often evolves rapidly beyond the original context. For celebrities whose careers depend heavily on public trust, these moments can become defining tests of credibility and communication. Throughout his career, Kutcher has repeatedly experienced the challenge of balancing personal relationships with public responsibility. The entertainment industry often creates close working environments where actors, writers, and producers spend years collaborating on projects. Those relationships can lead to strong personal loyalties. At the same time, audiences expect public figures to represent clear ethical positions, especially when serious social issues are involved. The tension between loyalty and accountability is not unique to Kutcher, but his situation became widely discussed because of his previous advocacy work. For observers, the controversy raised broader questions about how people navigate moral decisions when personal connections complicate public expectations. These discussions demonstrated how a single moment can reshape the narrative surrounding a celebrity who has spent decades building a particular image. Despite periods of criticism and controversy, Kutcher has continued working in multiple fields. Acting remains part of his career, but he now divides his attention among producing, investing, and philanthropic efforts. Over the years, he has appeared in additional television projects while maintaining involvement in technology ventures and nonprofit initiatives. This multifaceted career path reflects a shift that many entertainers have made in the modern media landscape. Rather than focusing on a single profession, they often develop portfolios that include business investments, creative production, and advocacy work. For Kutcher, this diversification has allowed him to maintain influence even as the entertainment industry continues to evolve. The transition from sitcom star to entrepreneur and activist illustrates how careers can develop in unexpected directions when individuals pursue interests beyond their original roles. Looking back over the arc of his life, several themes become clear. Early family experiences taught Kutcher about resilience and responsibility. His entry into modeling and television demonstrated how quickly opportunity can appear in unexpected places. Fame brought both success and criticism, challenging him to prove that he could evolve beyond the character that first made him famous. Later chapters of his career introduced new identities as an investor and humanitarian advocate. At the same time, moments of controversy reminded the public that even well-intentioned actions can be interpreted in many different ways. The combination of achievements, mistakes, and personal growth reflects the complicated reality behind many public figures' stories. Ultimately, the story of Ashton Kutcher illustrates how public images are often only one part of a much larger narrative. Behind the humor, business ventures, and philanthropic work lies a life shaped by personal experiences that most audiences never see. Like many individuals who rise to fame at a young age, he has navigated a path filled with both opportunities and challenges. His journey includes moments of compassion, ambition, controversy, and reflection. For viewers and observers, the broader lesson may be that celebrity stories are rarely simple. They evolve over time as new information, achievements, and decisions reshape how a person is understood. Whether people view Kutcher primarily as an entertainer, an entrepreneur, or an advocate often depends on which chapter of his life they focus on. What remains clear is that his story continues to develop, reminding us that public figures, like everyone else, are constantly growing and redefining their place in the world.